you're above your nose. The water's already over your nose. You know it's only a matter of minutes till you drown. And God says, deeper. And you go, what is this? What kind of God do I serve? You serve a God that likes to go beyond the possibilities of human thought. It's higher than the highest human thought is God's ideal for His children. And of course, Isaiah 55 says, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so higher are His thoughts and our thoughts, and His ways and our ways. Let me read to you from Military Intelligence, page 257, Christian Service. Assurances of success. I love this chapter. I mean, I have it so underlined, it's stained already. I keep dropping things on it. But it has a new cover on it. It was falling apart, and somebody came in and said, my husband does publishing. Give me your old book. Came back and brought it like brand new. I'm just going to read little pieces out of here. To everyone who offers himself to the Lord for service, withholding nothing. How much withholding? Nothing. That means everything, right? To everyone who offers himself to God, withholding nothing, is given the power to attain measureless results. Can't measure, it's too big. That's why when you said 20 million, you were out of place. It's much better to say, give me the continent, give me this, give me that. You don't know how much it's going to cost yet. If you only ask for an amount of money, you'll run out of money. If you just tell him, whatever it takes, that's what I want, then He'll give you whatever it takes. Don't put an amount of money on it. Don't ask God for a set amount of money. Ask Him for a continent and let Him pay for it. Let Him figure out how much it is. Okay? It says here, when we labor diligently for the salvation of our fellow men, God will prosper every effort. Remember last night we learned about the 4 horses going forth conquering and to conquer, right? How many efforts will be prospered? Every effort. God gives opportunities. Success depends on how the use that are made of them. How do you know what God wants you to do? Opportunities. Do you have an opportunity to help somebody? Yes. That's God telling you to do it. That's how you know what God's will is. Now, God has a lot of ways to tell us, but the very first thing is, if you're faced with an opportunity, seize it. If you're 8 years old and you want to marry a girl, propose to her. Be careful, Donna, I'm just kidding. That's what I did, though. One parent came to me, I'm really worried, your example has not been too good. My little 8-year-old boy says that he has to marry the girl next door. What am I supposed to tell him? Tell him to pray, Anyway. Opportunities. Look at this one. This seems like it almost sounds like blasphemy. It is so incredible. As the will of man cooperates with the will of God, it becomes omnipotent. Amen. My will becomes omnipotent, your will omnipotent? Doesn't that kind of sound like you're acting like God? No, the reason is, as you cooperate with God's will, your will wants what God wants. And if you want what God wants, it's a done deal. It's omnipotent, because that's exactly what God wants. Okay? It kind of sounds like you're taking to yourself attributes of God, but it's not that. It says you mold yourself so close to God's will, you will want what He wants, which means you get what you want. Whatever is to be done at His command may be accomplished in His strength. All His biddings are enablings. You want what God wants? Do you want souls? If you want souls, granted. How much should you risk yourself to save a soul? Any risk is no risk at all, because it's always going to be granted. You see, if you throw yourself into God's work, risking everything, you have risked nothing, because you're always going to succeed. You can jump into thin air and God will always catch you. I'm not talking about just jumping off of the roof of the temple, because Satan tells you to do that. I'm talking about if somebody is hanging off the edge of a cliff and you have to go there and go off the edge of the cliff to try to pull them back, do it. I was in Lima, Peru, and my wife got kind of depressed in Lima, Peru, because in Lima sometimes for 3 months there's no sun. The fog comes in and it's fog for 3 months. No sun for 3 months. She goes, I got to see the sun. I got to see the sun. I can't live like this. So we moved out of town to the university, about an hour away, but it made it hard for me because every day I had to drive to the union office back and forth to Lima through that heavy traffic and all that, you know how those of you that live in big cities in South America, the traffic is discourteous and they stick their nose in whoever can get in first, and there's buses going around and there's smoke and noise and there's people you know how that is. Every day, back and forth. But I did it for my wife. And it was kind of difficult because 2 hours a day doing this, and I did that for 6 years, and it was quite difficult. And I saw a little boy that used to always clean my windows. I didn't tell you the story last night, did I? I told it in one of the other churches. I have to ask to make sure. And I saw a little boy that always cleaned my windows, and his name was Caesar. And I stopped every day. Hi, Cesar, how are you? He cleaned my windows. I shared my lunch with him. It was a dangerous thing to live on the road. One day he told me some of his friends had been disappeared. They appeared a few days later without any corneas. Some ophthalmologist, trained, board-certified ophthalmologist, took those children, cut out their corneas, sold them for $20,000, and dumped the children back on the street. Driving a new Mercedes-Benz around at the cost of some little child's eyesight. Better that a millstone be hung around their neck. Someday they will have wished the millstone would have been hung around, rather than actually create blindness when those hands skilled in surgery were made to heal blindness. Anyway, there's a lot of difficult things on the street. I went back to Peru about 15 years later. I was driving with the other director through the part of town. There was a man stopped on the street, like every corner has people on the street. He had crutches. He only had one leg. He hopped over to our window and he said, "Can I clean your window?" The man said, "No, thank you." But as my habit is, I said, "What's your name?" "Are you Señor David?" I said, yeah. How did you know?" "I'm Cesar. You are the only person in my entire life that has ever asked me my name. Nobody else cared to ask me my name. People live on the street, they die on the street, and nobody cares." He lost his leg in an accident. It's a violent world. And I used to drive up this little narrow street, and they told me there's a lot of rapes, a lot of assaults, a lot of robberies along that long, narrow thing. I used to come home at 8 o'clock at night every night. And I always thought to myself, in one of the most violent cities in the world, what happens if I see somebody getting assaulted? What if I see a gang of young men assaulting somebody, stealing, maybe raping, maybe hurting somebody? What would I do? I made up my mind what I was going to do. I'm going to get out of my car and run straight at them. Leave that person alone. They said, "David, you're crazy. They will kill you." Really? They're going to have to deal with my angel first. Because nobody can touch me without permission from God. Do you believe that? You have to make up your mind, how are you going to deal with risk? You want to run from risk all the time? You'll be like that girl in New York that was stabbed 102 times in front of an apartment building, and nobody ever came out to help. She screamed and screamed and screamed. They were stabbed and stabbed 102 times. Nobody did anything. You know why? I don't want to get involved. I might get hurt. I made up my mind that if God allowed me to see an assault, I would